Hello and welcome to the final discussion for Peril's Gate. This is the seventh book in the Wars of Light and Shadow by Janny Wurts. We have been reading approximately 150 pages of this book every 2 weeks, and my friends here, as usual, are trying to distract me with all the books swiping across the screen.
Not working.
Today, we're going to, as I said, be talking through the end of the book. We will start the discussions for Traitors Not early August. I think the first one's tentatively scheduled for August 11th. These discussions are, of course, open to anybody interested. If your camera is shy, you can turn your camera off like Chibipo does. So consider joining us. Check out the page showing forum if you're interested in that, or join the forum if you'd like to just talk to us about the book. With me, the usual group of friends. Chris, could you start us off with introductions?
I can. My name's Chris Mullen from the channel Chronicle of Chris, also part of Speculative Speculations podcast, and from the Page Chewing forums as well. I'll pass on to Jared.
Yes, and I run the Fantasy Thinker YouTube channel, and I'm also on Speculative Speculations and other fine podcasts on pagechewing.com. Matt?
Hi guys, I'm Matt, also known as Miggins, and I run the Hot Behold Books Twitter channel, as well as lurking on the Page Chewing forums, and being here with you lovely folks. On to Chibi.
Hi, Chibi Po. I run my Twitter and I lurk on Page Chewing. And yeah.
And you're not camera shy. Okay.
I'm not camera shy at all. Nah.
Got that. Oh, I was going to change my subtitle to Evil Overlord. I'll do that for next time. So the end of the book where Arathon conquers Davian's maze. I know a lot happened in this book, but the scariest part of it for me was when Davian said he's conquered the first part of the maze. And I was like, what do you mean, the first part of the maze? What did I just read for 150 pages?
It's like 3 full chapters. It's like part 1 done, well done. He's exhausted. He can't think. He can't speak, and yet that's part 1 done. I was like, God damn. But like I said to you beforehand, without spoiling, it was all part of a trial, so there'd be a boy band between Davian and Arathon at the end. I mean, these are the kind of trials you want to put. If you want to have a boy band member, these are the kind of things you want to test to see what they're really made of.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's all fair.
Just the hazing to see if you can join the frat club.
Just get to the centre of the maze and Simon Cowell's just sitting there.
I thought it was a very interesting and unique ending to one of the many endings we've had in 6 books now. And I like how this one ended quite differently than the other ones have, and I thought that was very interesting. I thought it was very unique how she pulled this off, and plus, I thought that these last 4 chapters, and I was telling Chibipo earlier that these last 4 chapters almost served as a novella all on their own, with just the depth to them, and just the theme of conquering your own inner demons and coming out the other side. I don't know if he's a new man, but he's definitely changed man. And so that was just a great, these last 4 chapters were just a great journey, just for that
For sure.
deep inner journey that Arathon took. And it was pretty cool.
I thought this was I agree with you, Chad. I think every ending, I think we can see it's different and like a really rousing closure to whatever we've been reading in that book. I thought though that this was slightly similar to the Curse of the Mistwraiths ending, except like scaled up to 1,000. When he goes to after the battle and releases all the fallen and like helps them move on peacefully. I think he does that by singing to them, or I forget what he does, but yeah. And that was my favorite ending so far. And this ending is a little bit, in as much as you can call the last 200 pages of a book the ending of it, but I think it was that everything I loved about the ending of The Curse of the Mistwraith scaled up by a lot and intensified significantly, and it was that much more harrowing for that. You were saying, Chris?
No,
Oh.
I mean,
And I felt like, in a way, Arathon is trapped, by his own choice in this cave, and there's a sense very much that you're kind of trapped in there with him, as Janny herself has often said. If you don't understand something the first time, like it, and it's super important, then it will get hammered home. Like you're gonna understand it when you need to. And I think here, like you can't really escape the horrors, just the events happening over and over again. Like just like Arathon, you are forced to be in the moment. You can't be distracted by anything around you. You are there and experiencing these traumas, and I think that's something that's really special about this ending.
Yeah, and you mentioned his choice of entering Davine's stairway, um, which was basically uh, stepping across Peril's Gate, um, which was the name of the book. So it was just so very apt that was right at the beginning of chapter 14, and that was so apt that's the point where he steps across and he makes that choice to step across, even though the eagle was kind of leading him there, kind of saying, here's where it is.
Yeah, it's giving
So
him direction, but
yeah, so that choice comes down to that, or you know the possible destruction of facing Lysaiah's forces, and letting loose with the curse. And so what a choice.
I did like, as he's, you know, uh, careening his way up the stairs, because in my head is I'm just like there with Alara just watching the scene, and it's just like he's running up the stairs and just like crashing into the stair, the side, the railings, is just from drunken stagger as he just trying to run. And then like when Matt read the section last week or the last time, and he gets to that point where the Lazair fires off his light bolt, and he like has that little spasm from the curse and everything, and he falls across the into the tunnel, through the doorway. But then the magic of the place is like, yeah, you didn't actually choose to step through there, so it like just that he gets that whole surge of clarity where he can freely and 100% makes this choice to keep going in. Which I thought was like, yeah, no, that's pretty consistent for anything that the Fellowship do. It's like you're going to do this, you're going to do it, submit yourself to it willingly. So, and you can either keep going or step back outside and have a curse-driven barbecue with Lysair.
And he has to keep making that choice, which is something that I love what you were saying, Jared. It sparked this thought that it's not just one moment of this choice and that's it. He has to continue to keep taking these steps, and I mean that's actually really poignant, for reflecting some of the journeys some people might go through. It's not always a one decision and then everything gets easier, or you've made that decision. It's a constant momentum of keep making those decisions to keep moving forward. You have to keep dragging yourself up. So many times you could have just died. He even thinks about it, just kind of not getting up. I can't do this. And then he manages to pull himself through and keep making that choice. And that's the important thing, that he keeps making that choice over and over. He doesn't give in.
And then what was it? And I love the way it does it. It's like where it's just like, yeah, you think it's just showing him, all these things that he's done before, but it's like, no, it's it's not just he's not just seeing it for himself doing it over again. He's seeing it through how his actions and choices have affected everyone and people have interacted with, or in his particular case, even people that he may not have personally interacted with, because his actions have led to, you know, uh, well, let's face it, his PTSD is real.
But he sort of sees it outside of himself, doesn't he? Rather than kind of
From the
at the
perspectives of, yeah.
Yeah, so at the moment when he experienced them firsthand, he was seeing it through the curse influencing him, etc., rather than kind of almost like a second person looking at him in two parts a lot of times, saying actually the curse was affecting me in this way, which I think sort of instantly didn't he wasn't able to separate it, but other people were able to point to it and say, actually, if you look at this at what you've just seen, you acted properly at these points. Those are the things that actually saved him. His own choices and actions saved him, whereas it was the influence of other things that kind of ruined it. So even when he was scrying and kind of doing those things, the curse was hiding the fact that Deegan killed the people that he sent back, etc., and the things that he didn't know at the time. So he was trying to make the best choice for himself or for other people at that time.
Yeah.
And it ended up being a bad choice, but he was able to see it then in reflection for himself, which I think made it even all the more powerful to retell and re-see, because as Matt said, it's those things, those are big events, Talcoran, etc., throughout the book, and to have them revisited and kind of laid out in front of you and say, look, let's look to see what Arthur's actually done the whole way through the 5-6 books that we went through, and actually you can judge him as well as a reader. Never mind him judging himself on the horrors that he's going through, and it being bared all in front of Laura as well in a lot of ways, because she's seeing it from that perspective as well, and seeing everything kind of as it was, without kind of a taint of judgment or a taint of like making excuses from hearing it from Marathon or otherwise. She sees it for what it was, which I think was both important but also really interesting to read.
And it's also I like where where it's just established, it's like his guilt, and ultimately it's like, yes, you feel bad about these things that happened, but guilt driving you to suicide or whatnot. What's the point? You can't you can't like reparations for that, and I it's like there's nothing he can do really that's going to make the things he's been responsible for right for the people that suffered from it, like all the Vastmark widows. It's like he can compose the with his mastercard and try to get to them that way, but those people are still gone, so it's not like he can't make that right.
Yeah. Those events have happened.
Yeah. I love how when Lysaea and Sulfin Evan were approaching the gate, how they were just constantly nagging at each other. It was kind of amusing how that was going on. So I love that little interspersal of stuff, just to, because the stuff with Arathorn was very heavy, and and King, and very not happy, I should say. It was nice to read, but it was also very somber moments, and then you had this stuff interspersed with those two just nagging at each other the whole time, and I thought that was just hilarious. And then at the end of the chapter 14, you get that little news spin from Cerebald saying, we drove the spinner of darkness into the the maze of Davian, or whatever it was, into the dark maze of Kiwa, and he has been vanquished, basically,
Yeah.
And it was just like, oh, look at that little spin machine going. I wonder what, because we don't see the results of that yet in the rest of this book, but you wonder what. I'm curious if Trader's Knots, you don't have to tell me, Matt, gets into into the public spin of this stuff later on, but I just I know that's in there for a reason, so we'll see.
Spoilers.
we know, like, the Koreani and Lysa's people are already all set to disavow the person who comes out of the maze as the real Arathon. Like, he's going to be necessarily worse than the demon that went in. So yeah, this is not
Yeah.
going to do anything.
The thing I liked, and we'll see more in Traitors Not, because we started to see this with Sulfan Evand, and his bickering with Lysair, is you can kind of get the feel that um, uh, the shininess of Lysair and his stance and everything is really starting to wear thin, as far as Sulfan Evand's concerned, and
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, there was
uh,
a nice line there where what like Salfin Evan thinks to himself that all the death in at the 10 Drummond fields was caused by Lysers burning the place down. So he is inculcating some doubt, I think.
yeah, Lysair's all like, I am, light and blah blah blah, and Sulfan Evand's like, I'm side eyeing you right now. I know what you just went off and did. It's like don't be fronting this god business to me.
Well, this is it. I think this has sort of been building since they sort of had that discussion earlier in Peril's Gate where like says like, oh yeah, he's actually my half brother. Like that's actually true.
That's right.
And I think I remember saying at the time that I can sort of see him maybe not moving away from Lysair, but becoming a bit more skeptical, a bit more aware of the machinations going on. And I think we're continuing to see that here, which is nice
Yeah,
to see that develop.
as we've seen, Lysair doesn't really have anybody who, will stand up to him. They're all blinkered in, and you can see Sulfan's kind of, the shine and the, all the fancy worship is really wearing thin because he's like, yeah, no, you're a person, dude. You're not a god.
Yeah, he's not drinking the Kool-Aid as much. So.
So we're taking bets on when Cerbald's gonna off him.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, but it is a good point because between Self and F and also Prince Kivor at the time, both of them were able to, from within the inner circle and without much evidence really, aside from things that they see with their own eyes here and there that other people are celebrating and they're sort of internally questioning, there is fractures starting to break apart in the lance of light in some part, and you can only imagine that will start to spread a little bit.
So, oops, sorry. The Mistrate and sorry, we didn't know this before, right? That the Mistrate has guided pretty much every single one of Arathon's decisions so far. I thought that was a very interesting revelation because, once again, it makes me look at Lysair with a bit more sympathy. I don't have sympathy for his actions. Like, Arathon has been thinking that he has taken decisions with his own free will, but the Mistrate has been directing his choices. And Lysair's so much the worse because he has no awareness of being manipulated at all. Although he's been told a few times that I guess he's completely neglected, and so he's failing to examine what his whether his actions are his own or curse driven. But I I think that just threw everything so far a different light on everything that we've seen so far that Arathon did. I think everything that he's done, it's felt like he has no choice. This is the best thing he could have done at the time, but he's been guided in that direction by the curse. What do you all make of that?
It puts a new light on the events of the past 5 novels, and that right there, I think, is going to make any reread you do just look at everything you reread in a whole new light, because even the stuff that was like defensive on Arathon's part, like just possibly setting up defenses and possibly trying to have a means of not completely getting into the attack mode and the offensive part of war and what have you. Even that stuff seemed to be um, tainted by the Mistwraith's curse upon Arathon, and it makes you wonder, like how much of that stuff would have been different without the influence of the Mistwraith, you know?
Yeah, because like for example, you look at like, abducting Talith. He's just solidly looking at it
Yeah.
as a delaying tactic, and the potential consequences that result from it, are just like you go back to Warhost, and he doesn't, from the ransom and exchange, is like those didn't even
Yeah.
seem to occur to him. It'd probably just been like, you know, with how much it's affecting his thoughts, that he hadn't even considered um, what kind of impact that would have on uh, their marriage,
Yeah.
and how that would incite Lysair. And
Yeah, doing that, and just even taking those kids from Merior with the mother. Um, you even just go back and look at, like, why is it the building the ships and doing all that, and why is that? You get a kind of just a new wondering of why he was planning all that stuff out, and it wasn't just as a foil to whatever Lysaia was planning. It was not as defensive as it seemed. It was actually more, um, it, the Mistwraith influence in it, and it makes it a little more offensive, for more. I would say sinister. I think that might be too strong a word, but I can't exactly find the word I'm trying to figure out. But it just
definitely,
definitely sheds a new light.
I would say something to Sinister, because you consider when he's reviewing the scrying from Warhost to Vastmark, um,
Yeah.
and he finds, because at that point he had command, however briefly, of his mage talents thanks to Dakar, and he finds, and because I'll assume at least, that the curse had infiltrated his own being enough that it was that part of him was using his own mage talent to block off um, you know all those possibilities, using his own talents and abilities against him, because he used the whole trick that he was, the sound, spells and whatnot that he'd set up to keep the people away, and Curse of the Mistwraith, and just the realizing you've got this whole part of yourself that's just so thoroughly corrupted that it's you know twisting everything you do. um, yeah.
I think it's interesting how it's totally reframed what the mystery it was. Like, I think that from that point of view is that we always thought it was being activated rather than being active in the decision making process. So when they would get close together, it was being activated or something of that effect. Whereas it's been part of the planning process. It's a more sentient being than maybe we had given it credit for in our reading.
And
Of,
yeah, and
of,
we
Yeah.
and if I remember correctly, you overlooked that too, because back in Warhost, when it goes for the ransom and all, and Lysair and Arathon are close together, and it's Sethvir, one of the others, talks about how the curse is a self-aware thing.
Yeah.
And
And this was particularly, I think sinister seems the perfect word to describe the Mistwraith and its actions. That's the what was especially chilling was that uh Arathon couldn't figure out that the Mistwraith is interfering because of his loss of mate sight, but it's possible that the continued blockage of his mate sight is also driven by the wraith. And
I think
so
so. Yeah.
it's like that, it's like those stories where you kill a monster and it spawns like five more, or when you kill them, or it's like, anyway, like the zombie stories. It's just like the stakes keep increasing. It it felt like that, except it's all in hindsight. So it's like, what all this damage that has already been done, that w- w- what yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he moves on past that. It's this knowledge also could be the thing that hurts him most, but it's coming at a time when he's sort of seeking redemption of sorts. So yeah, it's just all very interesting how they're all played together.
See, I had a really, it's interesting hearing you guys talk about this because I had a very different reaction, which was kind of like, well, oh, now that he knows that it was a mystery of influencing all of that, then that might take a lot of the burden off of him, knowing that, okay, well, this is really bad, but at least it wasn't me. Like, I can't stop these things, I can't go back and change them, but at least I can know that it wasn't me that was making those decisions, it was something else involved, which I think is, from what I understand, is your reaction is sort of the typical reaction. I'm very much out of the box with that. But that was my first initial reaction was, oh, great, maybe he can see this as a positive in a weird way that it takes it off of him. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think you're partly right, because I think that's part of why Davian was kind of lecturing him so much, because I think Arathon still wanted to take on that guilt, and I think Davian was trying at the end when he finally got out. Arathon's like, "Well, what more tricks you gonna play on me?" And he's like, "No, dude, you did it." You know. And I think Davian was trying to point that out, but maybe maybe not.
Yeah.
TV was frantically looking something up.
Yeah.
uh,
But there is one line in chapter 16 that says, "In their an exasperating viciousness, the resharpened vision of the maze exposed an insidious, fresh twist. The GS of Death's Shear had not been quiescent, had not been, sleeping or whatever, had not been uh, inactive, and so it told us that it was active the whole time, basically. The mystery, the curse.
Yeah.
mm,
All those times he's like, I get away from him, and it's not. I can it's not bothering me as long as I'm away from him, and it's like no. Um, but and then and I also like to touch, is just like when those moments when it gets too much for him, and like those little things helped him deal with the various issues he ran into. Some of them not so little, like the little girl that he rescued, who didn't survive out of Atara, or Jiliath, I think is her name.
Yeah.
The little girl from Vastmark, and then of course his dad.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah, we did get a lot of interesting history here.
That was a nice surprise.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
Arathon's upbringing.
Yeah.
And his grandpa.
Well, especially about the exploration of the other sides of him that aren't Fallon. The Sahelis kind of part of him, how strong and prevalent that played a role in his upbringing and how it shaped him. And it meant by the time when they came through the other part of it, when he was kind of addressing how he could take on, probably the wrong word, the mystery, but said it's very much attached to the compassion part of you. It is not just who you are. You are made up of many facets and many parts of upbringings and lineage, and so all of that comes through, and then to kind of push it forward and say, look, you're an extraordinary person at the end of this day. You're not just a mage, you're not just whatever. Even Davian kind of comes to that conclusion at the end to kind of say, look, this is I'm impressed, and Arthur's still in the defensive, going, "Yeah, but what else have you got lined up for me?" And he went, "No, you got it. You've proven yourself." And he's still not believing him. He's like, "No,
You passed 100 on 100.
Here's your medal."
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting that what he used to conquer the Mistwraith in the end, I think, if I read that scene correctly, was the fact that it had latched on to what he learned at Rowan, the magecraft that he learned there, but he became a master bard afterwards. But the Mistwraith didn't really use that um, to keep driving his decision, so he was able to turn it back on the Wraith and so free himself of it. Or maybe combining the gifts, it wasn't canny enough to do that, so he was able to combine the two. So it's unclear to me if the curse is gone or if it's just something that he can detect now and so stop the influence of.
It's very clearly not going. In fact, it states that nearly word for word is that it is there, but it is quietened in terms of its ability to influence his decision making and influence his mage sight and stuff. As far as I remember reading.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. Yeah, I wasn't sure if something happened after that because I don't remember explicitly finding out that he has his mate side until the end when he shows up at the last room with Davian. But
Yeah.
I was wondering if anything else happened that I missed about the curse.
Yeah, maybe I missed this, but I wonder how, or when the curse, if there's obviously some kind of sentience to this wraith, when it's going to recognize that, oh, something's, changed, something's shifted in Arathon. Maybe I missed that, but, I wonder how
Well,
long
no,
it will take
it's
him.
the curse. Itself is self-aware, but Erethan never got a wraith, implanted in him the way Lysair did. What they did do, as I was discussing this in Discord with someone earlier, is when they ambushed him at Ithamon, it like basically copied every bit of his Raven training, like Varsha said.
Right.
And while it so it just encompassed the scope of that, so it gained all of that, but then and so the curse is able to basically it took that and then went and then borrowed off of some of the fellowship stuff when they were fighting, and that's how it bounded up in their life force so that they can't just like break it. But then and then used his abilities and crafted the little curse that is on him and on Lysair now. So
Does that mean that the wraith that or the curse that's manipulating Lysair is also sort of smarter than he is in terms of magecraft? Because at least Arathon is aware of it, but Lysair does not have any mastery, but the wraith has access to some information that he does not, so it can manipulate him far more than it did Arathon, which we know it's doing.
with Lysair having no defense, no way to recognize when it's the curse prodding him, and so forth.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. Didn't they go into explaining that because of Arthur's previous training, that he could understand the Mistwraith and how it worked, especially like in terms of when he was exploring his Master Bard training, with again from that almost second person, that he could see its weakness to certain resonances and frequencies as he did, and that was part of the unraveling it at the same stage because he could kind of analyze it on a more as is Janny's kind of magic system, this kind of scientific level.
Yeah.
He could kind of see it and understand it in ways that Lysair will hope to. Like he just has never invested himself in that training.
Yeah.
Makes total sense. Yeah.
Speaking of scientific, I love that the unraveling of it came from him figuring out what part of the resonance in Alethea was staving off the wraith, and so reusing that to stop the wraith's influence in himself. I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, it was so much fun to read that whole section as because it kind of was there and then it disappeared and then it came back, but that almost surge of victory for Arthur's own personality kind of winning out and his smarts, like we've talked about this lots of times. The ability for Janny to write smart characters is my favorite part in pretty much all of her books. When smartness wins out, it is so satisfying to read. It's almost better than winning a battle or anything like that. When somebody can outsmart a foe, and in this case, the Mistwraith, which has been there prevalent for 4.5 books now.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think reading clever characters is one of my favorite setups in a book, and this does not disappoint at all. Um, that it does also remind me of Cycle of Fire. The some of the stuff that happened in this reminded me of the f- finale of the Cycle of Fire trilogy to Chibipo. Maybe you and I can talk about it afterwards, but so we don't spoil it for the others. But um, yeah, you can. I haven't read the Empire trilogy, but I can see the recurrence of the clever characters and also the sheer resilience of characters when they have
Yeah.
to overcome a difficult circumstance. I and that as the climax of a book, right? It's not this huge battle, it's not people clashing, it's not larger than life, but somehow is. It's like this one person dealing with their inner demons and overcoming them
Yeah.
as the ending of a book. I think that's quite unique, and it's brilliantly done. It's pretty satisfying as a conclusion.
Yeah.
And
It's
it's in,
done. It's done in Master of Whitestorm as well. It has a similar.
Yeah,
oh, okay.
Master of White Storm and without spoiling, what they're about, and Cycle of Fire definitely have parts that are clear. Are clear trial runs to help her. I think to refine some of the ideas she pursues here. As I understand from talking to Janny, Kiwar, and the entire sequence through the Mage is one of the first things she wrote.
Oh
Way
wow.
back. Yeah.
Interesting.
Obviously it got refined and everything, but she did say that it's like the first version of it. It's one of the very first things that she wrote
Wow.
for.
And
For
then worked
I wonder if
backwards
she
to
still
set the
has that.
events up.
Yeah, but it does feel pivotal, and I think what was interesting for me is as soon as you started and going in, I sort of knew where it was going to end up. What was the point of it? That it was going to kind of resolve around the mystery and its hold over him. But that didn't take away from how satisfying it was, even though that was sort of the the likely outcome. Because she also flirted this idea that it was going to end up with Allura invoking the Coriani um, hold over him to save him. Like it kept on being brought up as if, well, this is obviously in classic fantasy tropes.
Yeah.
That, if they had said that meant that was what was going to happen. That's why Allura was there, and she sort of played with
Yeah.
that a lot as well, which was always a lot of fun.
Yeah. She played with that, and she played with his when she was going through his history with his training with his grandfather. There was like some contradictory information that he learned from his grandfather that had to deal with oaths and then the curse, and that was at odds with each other. And it was really cool because she gave you a lot of that, like what you were saying with with the possibilities of different oaths contradicting with each other. And then with Alera's section in chapter 15, she had this real need for action, and that contradicted also with the fact that if she did interfere, it might not be the best thing in the world. And so it was just kind of this ongoing theme of this inaugural right of choice against doing the right thing, and it was just like you said, beautifully played out in all these chapters. Yeah.
Yeah, and I really loved it, that the her presence is what helped him fight through towards the end. That he knew, so it's not like she was just there and right along for the ride for fun. She actually
Sweet.
helped without actually contributing, like without actively contributing, just her presence there.
Yeah.
The knowledge that his own destruction would mean hers too drove him sometimes when he would have given up, maybe. Like I don't think I believe that he really would have. Maybe the oath he gave to Asandi to keep living would have done it too, but trying to keep Elira alive, that helped. And I think once again, seeing how she helped without really invoking that Koreani oath of depth, that was pretty
Yeah.
awesome. And to your point, Chris, I think everybody's afraid that Arathon will not survive the maze at the end of this book. But we kind of know there are 5 more books after this, so he cannot die. So what happens now? Like what change? I think it's not whether or not he survives. That's the question. It's how he is changed through the maze that made it interesting. So even just knowing, like, my point is even knowing how it will end, maybe how we think we know, it was still interesting to see how he gets there.
Yeah. It's exactly what the series needed at that time, which is why it wasn't surprising, the kind of outcome of it, because how much longer can you have the two of them affected by the curse, nearly running into each other and slightly missing each other? It sort of feels a bit repetitive in some ways, whereas this kind of, they can run into each other again and again, and all of those interactions are now fresh. And again, having Arthur, giving back Arthur the ability to sort of not fight back, but be clever again in how he evades and all of the stuff that was so delicious in the earlier books that was kind of taken away. Sort of being like a trapped rat for book after book after book, trying to be clever just to obfuscate and using, unfortunately, having to use other people, which is part of the whole thing of his trials, to be able to get him through. Gives these next lot of books, right, what can happen, and then also with the idea that the curse can be subdued. Even if Lyser has the wraith, there is a way to defeat it, you know, in some way, and sort of gives the idea that there is a path to victory or overcoming and redemption, essentially, for Lyser, even though, you know, it's only Varsha that's Team Lyser at the moment, you know.
More team, I understand more Lyser. Like I'm less angry at Lyser, which is fair.
I'm on the same way.
Just swap the words Lyser for Hitler and listen to yourself. It's
no.
It's not.
What's in your drink there, Chris?
Fighting juice.
But the interesting thing about that is it can be subdued, but it needs to come from the inside. Like Arathon has this moment where he realizes the Fellowship can't do anything about it, because it's almost, I forget the language that was used there, but is it to the effect that there's something about his own consciousness that's allowing the Wraith to influence his decisions, which Lyser is like deeply ingrained in that. So yeah, that's going to be interesting. So one sort of question I have is, the Ads Adept explains to Ilera that if a horse comes in and it's shackled, it'll leave the hostel being made free of its unwillingness to work with its owner, right? So does that mean that if either Lyser or Arathon, knowing that they are trapped by the curse, if they leave the hostel, like if they go through a cleansing ritual, would come off free from the curse somehow? Is that a possibility? But I think you also, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that was what, almost effectively what was offered to Lazair back in Warhost. When he visited when he's chasing after Janess and Tharek, and he visited the hostel of Acid Adepts, they, similar to what happened with Kivor, after he woke up and he had his whole experience there. You can cast you out beyond the veil, basically, and you can potentially come back and be reforged into something new.
But you also have to be aware of your shacklement, right? Because Lyser is not really. So if he went in without knowing or without disliking his entanglement with the Wraith, then nothing would happen.
Right. You'd have to, what it would probably end up is, he'd probably, pass beyond, into death, because it'd be similar to the same principle, where you have to identify, like what they did with Kivor, what actions, acknowledge those parts of yourself. Or like with the little girl that Dakar and Earthen tried to heal, and the whole principle that I set up, whereas she had to be willing to acknowledge that, hey, this is the actions that put me in danger, and to be willing to accept the change. So if
That's
you're
what I
not
was
willing
saying.
to do that, then it wouldn't work.
Yeah, that.
Because we saw Lazaire is like, oh my god, evil race in the fountain, can't nope.
And
Well, it goes
speaking
back
of
to
that,
that. Okay, go ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
It just
I
goes
was
back
just
to
gonna
that
say,
right of choice.
yeah.
That's all.
I was just gonna say one of my favorite moments of this sequence in QR was when that little girl in Warhost, when she came up, and if I'm remembering this correctly, she kind of like leads Arathon on, and that was just one of the most poignant, beautiful moments of this whole thing. Like that really kind of came one of those full circle moments. I loved that.
Yeah, like that moment, the one with the little girl from Atara, and Stephen and his wife, spirits, and then the older guy that he saved with the tree thing, near the end of Talcorn, Madre or Madri, I don't know how to pronounce it, but no, since we haven't brought up this one, and then we get to near the end of his recounting of everything, and he's seeing what happens to Jarrett.
Yeah, that's.
And then just because they're a law unto themselves, even though it's a recap, is we get the centaur, and the centaur's just like, hi, how you doing? Let's chat.
It's no recap, Chibi. Janny was tell you off.
So can we agree now that Jarrett is like dead and gone? Can you stop giving me false hope about that?
Well, they also say like he is, but he isn't in a lot of ways. That sort of like reaffirms that.
He's physically died.
Yeah.
Because I had this conversation with Janny. I was kind of like, oh, like, was that it? Like, and she's like, the big send off was when he did the whole thing where he went beyond the veil. And I was like, yeah, but I kind of wanted like more goodbye. I didn't realize that was goodbye. If I'd realized, like, so I think that's definitely the end of
At the
that.
bottom of a card.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Jarrett.
No, I thought Arathon asked a great question when he was going through that stuff with being shown Jarrett's death and stuff like that. And that was he asked, what was the future worth this, when he was being shown that? And I thought that was just a very poignant question, a great question that he asked, but what were the I mean, it makes you rethink what the alternatives may or could have been at that point. But I really, really like that was put in there.
And I like the one line when he's speaking with the centaur, and he's like, "Am I worth this, death?" And the centaur's like, "What does your worth and this death have in common?"
You have to admit, the centaur is just like imminent. Those scenes with the centaur are just so cool.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like
Yes.
amazing. They're just like, oh, it's like God just appeared and said, "Here, I'm gonna fill in some of the blanks for you."
Yeah,
Or,
like the cavern is like way too small for the centaur, but even so, the cavern just like the centaur still doesn't brush the ceiling, isn't having to hunch down or anything, even though it would be like an impossibility. It's like the Pravians are really, really cool.
It's kind of like, I don't know if anyone saw. I know I was watching Coldplay at Glastonbury last night, and they had the guy that played Marty McFly in Back to the Future. He showed up, Michael J. Fox. Yeah, so it's kind of like, when a rock star kind of shows up, and that's when the Pravians show up.
Michael
Yeah.
J. Fox is a unicorn. I like that. I like that analogy. I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah. I agree. Every Bravian appearance is
And
magnificent.
Davian's analysis of Arthur's journey when he finds out there are 2 extra bodies that appeared in the thing, going, 2? What? Who are these people? How did it happen? Because I was sort of confused. I sort of assumed that he knew Allure was going to be there because of some of the conversations they'd had previously about, like, it was sort of intimated that they were sort of on a level, and they sort of had a, or
Mm.
she knew Davian had a plan, and Davian knew that she had a plan, kind of thing. So the fact that that was news to Davian, I think, was interesting. But then obviously, well, who was the other one?
Yeah.
Do I need to fix something here? What's going on?
Yeah, did I break? Did I break that? This hasn't been used in ages. Like the plumbing might be a bit shoddy.
He fixes it. Oh, you got to go through it again, Aaron.
Yeah. Oh, there was a
Like, it didn't
mistake
work
there.
the first time.
Yeah.
I was just doing software metaphors for all of them. Like you left a port open.
You only played the beta, right? Now that the beta, you can play through. I've changed some bits. It'll still be interesting.
And then the maze garbage collects after itself after the person has been through.
Hadn't she saved any of my settings? Oh well.
It's not a bug.
It's
not a bug.
It's a
Indeed,
feature.
indeed.
Feature, not a bug.
To be fair, the bit where he got through the first part of the maze and we realized that he still had a bit to go, that felt a bit like the programming backdoor. Like you can choose any one of these 4 walls, and he has looked at the 4 walls and goes, "I'm going to take the 5th wall, thanks."
Yeah.
The one that you forgot about.
That was really cool. Oh, I liked that one of those doors was just straight up close to him because of the oath. Yeah, and once again, like speaking of how clever things are when he probes the doors instead of just like blindly trying to decide. Not that Arathon ever would do something like that, but he's probing the doors, trying to figure out whether they are a trap or an illusion. That was pretty cool too. And then, ooh, what was up with the zombies afterwards that tried to entrap him? There is this question I had of not that it's answered here, but I was trying to understand whether what they see in the maze is something that, of course, everything up to there was his a reliving of his own actions. But further down the maze, when all the dead people try to crowd him, was that also because of who he is, or is that what happens to everyone who shows up there?
Yeah, I wasn't sure.
There wasn't so much dead people as as far as he could tell, they appeared to be real, people.
Were they all people who tried to go through the maze previously?
He wasn't sure, but then when he well, they've been flesh and blood and everything. When he does this, cast the unbinding things against the spells, Davian spells, he finds out that none of them were real. Even though they were, appeared to have flesh and blood, none of it was real.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he did mention that Davian was quite the illusionist previously.
What is it? Davian's craft had encompassed an artistry that ran outside the pale of natural limitation. Nowhere had Arathon encountered an illusion that could replicate stone firm enough to support moving weight.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, because the even what he was walking on was an illusion. Yeah, that's right.
It kind of reminds me of Indiana Jones in The Last Crusade when he's going through those trials at the end and he has that bridge that used to walk, the invisible one.
That's a good analogy. I like that one. Yeah.
I love how he also fell back on Halaron's training, of course. to help help him get through this and help save the day basically. And I love that description of a bard on page 711 in this version. But there's this big section that uh, went over what Halaron explained to Arathon in his early training when he was talking about his performance, and he says his performance tonight never once felt short of perfection. But then he went on to tell him everything wrong with that perfection of performance, and it was just a excellent passage that really just wrapped up the essence of what a bard truly is. And I really love that whole passage, and I'll probably do a video on it at some point.
Yeah,
But
we've seen glimpses of that, where he's just like, he's reading the room, and not just like any individual or the whole group, but he's playing for all those people and being able to sound out, and draw the individual person in, figuring out what they and adjusting in response. So
yeah.
um,
Yep, and it was great because that's when you find out that only the lore from Ravin had been suborned, and not this lore, not the lore of the bard. And I thought that just was like, oh, that's so cool. That gives such a cool angle to how Arathon gets out of all this, and how he proceeds through this devastating maze here.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. There was the conversation between Luhain and Davian. I thought
Yeah.
that was fantastic.
Through the gargoyles. He's talking through the rock. I'm like, oh, that's awesome.
I love that Dakar notices that the gargoyle eyes are shining more than they usually do. We're like, we know Davian's there. And then Luhain, he takes off about the same time when Dakar says that. And you find out later he's like trying to make the gargoyle talk back to him. and then Davian's like, yeah, he's either going to come out alive having conquered the maze, or I've sent him to his death. Like, no remorse there.
What have you done? What have you done? Yeah, that was very funny.
It's awesome. Very cool.
Yeah, he's an interesting character for sure. I really want to know more about him.
Well, especially like hearing in your news clips at the end that you get Sethvir's proclamation of the boy band. I hazard the incursion of Ratz out of Marak will pose as less grief than that pair bound in the alliance. I chuckled at that as well. The fact that they seem sort of like a kindred pair.
Yeah. And they talk about how similar they are. I guess it was obvious all along. They are both a little. I mean, we don't know enough about Davian, but almost you get the impression that they're a little too clever for their own good. And now the two of them together.
And then I like this one bit because we get two instances of this. The first with the centaur when he waltzes into Lassayer's camp, but then we see Dakar do the same thing, except not as effectively when after they've before Luhain goes to talk to to Davian the gargoyle, where Dakar's like he tried to swear, yet the word that emerged from between his chill lips came out in actualized Paravian. Before he could retract that horrific mistake, the air flashed with bursting streamers of light. And, because Janny's mentioned before that like actualized Paravian is like a language of power. So I'm assuming that's similar to what the centaur spirit did, where he was like when he burned, where they cut off Jared's braid and put it up on their banner. And he's like, firelight, I call you to cleanse this, or whatever it was. The first part was in Paravian, so I'm like, does that mean like, similar to the sound bits where we've talked about with, the music that, it's like the intonations and, how the, how it's spoken and everything is, how it, shapes, whatever you're doing.
So did we find out that Davian found a way to overcome the state of incorporeality?
Yes.
Because
You
it's
are
because he
Davian, Erethan tested at length. The sorcerer
Yeah.
raised his brows with corrosive interest. Has my portrait been removed from Althane Tower?
Yeah.
Erethan met and held that striking, sharp stare. No, he said carefully. But when your name was spoken, the reference held you as discorporate.
Yep.
The artisan's hand in Davian's lap recoiled into a fist. So I was, he admitted, his short bark of laughter alive with private amusement. Just as suddenly he was struck, thoughtfully sober. Yet who can set limits on determined creativity? I dislike the state immensely. That's all he gives us on it. Doesn't, because
That's what you get. Yeah.
He
He's
doesn't
like,
ask why, but
yeah, he just disliked it, so he did something about it.
Yeah.
But I'm
What
like,
feature of his character?
but I'm like, well, how come the other sorcerers who are discorporate can't also do that? And that's the question I have in my mind.
Ooh.
See, Davian's been by himself, not doing the things that the other sorcerers have been doing, so he's had a lot of time on his
Yeah.
Ah.
He could become corporeal again if he could just kind of go back and get his body that's been sealed off from protecting the realm, because he closed the door basically to keep the meth snaky kind of things out. Isn't that right? Am I misremembering that?
Caradmon died or became discorporate sometime during the Second Age. I think during the wars against the Mathuri and the Drake Spawn. Luhane died during the rebellion.
Oh, right. I
It's in like Mage Trance protecting someone and
Okay.
got pulled down. Some people came across him and just stabbed him to death, basically. Killed his physical body anyway.
Yeah, I remember seeing one of them still with their body in the Gallant. I forget which it was.
Yeah, I think Luhane would have still had his body at that point.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
Right. And we also saw that Davian, he broke the monarchies. Was that
right.
the betrayal, breaking the monarchies?
I think so.
Well, again, they said that was Caradmon gave him that name. It wasn't like they all just sat around and went, what we'll call Davian now. He's kind of away. It just came from Caradmon and it kind of caught on. So it just not like him.
He was responsible for leading that rebellion though, right? Or like he caused it somehow. That's what we know. We don't know what he did.
My own personal version of the Havens. But it was no more successful. So whatever he was, planning for, it didn't work out.
What's the Havens?
Back in
the slaughter in
Warhorse?
Vastmark 500, where he selected the survivors and sent them.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just like brutally slaughtered all those people.
Oh, okay. So he did that so that the rebellion would calm down. But I thought he caused the rebellion. But
spoilers.
Okay.
No, I mean, y'all actually, we'll actually see the moment. I won't tell you when or where, but you'll actually see the moment where you'll get a recollection of that scene when he was made discorporate.
Okay, sounds good.
And there was something to the effect of, or if I remember correctly, that my goals are the same as the sources, but my methods are different. So, which kind of gives us a sense of where his direction is headed and where he's coming from. There's very much a sense of this. He's sort of, in a way, pleading with Alfred, like kind of like, don't listen to me. I'm doing this because I have the same interest at heart as the other sorcerers. I'm not what I'm being called as, the betrayer. I did this for a reason. Like, trust me. Trying to get him on side. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops and see his perspective.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I like the this bit. Listen well, Davian said, pacing again. The seven are ancient. Their beginning lies so far distant, mortal thought cannot conceive of their origin. For a cast of mind that has seen whole worlds reduced to a dust smear against dying stars, 500 years is a passing trifle.
Yeah.
Citron and silver, the odd ring on the sorcerer's left hand, flashed through a warning gesture. Take superb care if you would resist. My colleagues think in the language of epochs. Their plans won't drift astray for one man's recalcitrance. When the fellowship starts to intervene, you cannot imagine you'll stay in the course of their collective displeasure. And then
That
Erethan's
line.
just like, yeah, and Erethan's like, their resources are otherwise occupied just now.
Yep.
That line gave me chills as well. I remember reading that the first time and thinking like, uh-oh, like I've got a sneaky suspicion that he's going to get on the wrong side of these sorcerers, or that their interests are going to sort of diverge, or at least their methods. And I feel like this is where the direction is headed in the second half of the series, and we're going to see what these sorcerers can really do. But we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. But Davian just gave Arathon access to his libraries.
That's right.
And I can't wait to find out what comes of that.
But he also, like, this other bit he sums up where he's like, where is it? Okay. Okay. Where he talks about, you are probably the most gifted individual ever to try the influence of the Fellowship of Seven.
Mm-hmm.
And Erethan's like, how does that signify? And then he's like, to the Fellowship, endowed as you are. And like he's speaking of as a collective, so he's speaking of himself here, but because he says of seven, then he's like, endowed as you are, they would never dare to approach you. Dakar's no liability, despite his excesses and his idiot vices and his ungovernable passions. He will achieve the stability of a diamond, though 1,000 years may be needful to mold him.
Yeah, that was interesting. Yeah.
He's half a diamond now.
Yeah, and then he's just like, but with Erethan, it's like, in order to get you with this combination of abilities, like the sensitivities, is like you'd be subjected to pressures like he happened here. No human being should be asked to endure, and your response would be to be like, yeah, well, I'm just going to choose, to quote something he says in the tunnel, might as well choose damnation in style. He'll just choose the most crazy option, and it's like, and so you would have to be inflamed until you mastered your rebellion. The Fellowship would never cause them such risk. They can't. The brute conflict might shatter the compact.
Indeed.
Yeah, so it's like he would run around and he'd be willing to take risks that they wouldn't, because they're threading a very fine needle. So
Cool.
Yep. Want to know what's in that library?
Books, probably.
lots of books.
Just books. That's it.
Yeah.
There's also an armory.
Oh yeah, that's right.
An AK-47, just in the corner.
He was one of the people who made the atomic bomb things, right?
Yeah,
That tracks.
that's true.
No
So keyboard.
gunpowder. No gunpowder.
No gun.
Gunpowder allowed. Yeah.
That's why it's stored in the nothingness of the keyword tunnels.
Yeah.
Nobody's saying anything about no freaking laser beams, though.
That's true. There's no gunpowder there, just electricity.
Freaking laser beams.
Is that a Star Wars quote? No.
Unfortunately, it's an Austin Powers one, but
Well, I mean,
about as far away from Janny's world as you can have.
We've seen the sorcerers use laser beams
Oh, that is true.
when
What
they're
Laser does?
Missouri and and Lazer does his thing too. So But yeah, when they're clearing out the infestation at Marthelvane and Curse, it's like Luhane or Caradmon is just like, all right, we've got these guys trapped now. Let's go laser beams. That starts blasting everything.
Something I'm really, really interested to see is obviously we know that in their past the Fellowship were some sort of scientists, so to speak. How the hell did they get to become like sorcerers with all these like seemingly magical powers from people of science to becoming people? Well, they're introduced as sort of wizards. Obviously they're more than that, but how did they kind of transition? I'm very interested to learn their past in that regard.
Hasn't that been mentioned?
I don't think it's like fully been like.
I mean, it hasn't been fully fleshed
broadened
out, but we know
open
how
yet.
they got to
Yeah.
Aethir.
Oh yeah, I know how they like literally physically got there, but I mean how like see it more
Just
fleshed
blame the
out.
dragons. It's all dragons. It's a fantasy series. The dragons are behind everything.
Keyboard becomes an arts adept.
And
Yes.
that's yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
I thought that was pretty cool. And
Yeah.
totally new identity, like new, they I liked how they, they as far as the rest of the world's concerned, he's dead, and he becomes an adept, and that's I like that. That was pretty cool. That'd be interesting to see what happens in the future there.
That's another one that I think the title of the chapter told us where it was going, but it's still really cool to read. Because why it's called Adept, I think, that chapter, and we haven't seen any adept stand out over any other, so it must mean that this guy becomes one.
That'd better be like reverse Star Wars, where instead of "I am your father," it's Keyboard going, "I am your son."
I am your son. I'm eager to see where that goes, because I had the question about how does one become an adept, and it's really interesting given how much Elaine has struggled to find her place in Lysair's household and whatnot, that the thing keeping Kefort tied to his uh, physical form here is his love for his mother. So at least she's got that going for her, which is nice. And we don't know yet what happened to Elaine, so maybe we'll find out in the next book.
Maybe.
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 I see some tongue biting going on.
I have no idea. Absolutely.
You lied.
We also didn't see an outcome for the thing that happened when Jarrett was getting his mate sight, that apparently the wards were broken, and we'll find out in the future what happened there. Which would be, there was in the scene where Jarrett was getting his mate sight, so there was a third presence there that Arathon detected but didn't know what to do about.
I remember nothing.
But I don't, I highlighted too much to be able to find the quote, but it did say that what the interference will become, like the outcome of that will become clear in the future. But given that Jarrett's currently dead, what could that mean? What's going to happen with that interference? Anyway.
Oh no. Oh no.
Rhetorical questions.
I have no idea.
Yeah, you don't. Okay. And if we get to the first 4 chapters of Traitor's Knot next time, Chibipo, will you finally tell me what made Davian not be isolated anymore?
Yes. Because once you get through the first 4 chapters of Traitor's Knot, you'll you'll what's going on there will be pretty clear.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah.
I must have missed that
It
part.
involves self-evident.
You made it clear for me.
Matt's looking forward to finding out.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to rereading and finding out.
I'll DM you on that, Matt. I'll send you a DM on Discord. About what
so good.
that is. So.
Okay.
Sure.
So, anything else that we should chat about before we go?
Looking forward to the first single. That's all I'm thinking.
I covered it.
Yes. Jared's done.
The reunion tour.
Yeah. First single for Laura. It only takes a minute, girl. Yeah, that's what. Yeah.
Oh,
Take that reference not for our American friends.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
I'll just go on YouTube. You'll find. That's fine. That's
Okay.
fine.
It only takes a minute. Okay.
It only takes a minute, girl. It's not a good song, but at least you just imagine Arathon and Davian, doing it, and then
Okay.
get a bit of a laugh.
So if that's it, we will see everyone beginning of August with the first four chapters of Fate is Not.
Nice.
I will let everybody do outros. Chris?
Yes, my name is Chris Moen, Chronicle of Chris Channel, Speculative Speculations Podcast, Page Tune Forums. Garrett.
All of those things Chris said, except Fantasy Thinker YouTube channel. In addition to that, all this stuff. Yeah, so that.
You can find me over at Hobbit Hole Books on Twitter. That's where I'm usually hanging out, or over lurking on the Patreon forums and on these wonderful podcasts.
Yep.
Chippy?
I can be found on these wonderful podcasts, of course, and on Page Chewing and on Twitter.
And you can find me on the YouTube channel Reading by the Rainy Mountain and on all the podcasts that these guys mentioned. And yeah, that's it. I'll see everyone in about a month. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you soon. Bye.